Toys and imagination. Although life was uncertain and not easy for me as a kid, I recall those exciting times, like my first time walking in a pre-recorded playback kids zoo, where each exhibit or animal pen had a button that you could press, and it would speak about the experience highlights. But there was no person there, the exhibit. It talked itself. It was so exciting and amazing. Or another time, with my mother's boyfriend of the era, Bill the mechanic. We'll have a lot of stuff to talk about there later, I'm sure. But anyway, he took us on a zoo safari where we drove through an amusement park with roads throughout to drive on, but that had wildlife, real lions, and all around things like rocks and trees and ponds, and there's all sorts of stuff that I just never got to see living in the hood. It was awesome. At the end of that drive-through safari, Bill bought me a real toy. He purchased from a vending machine a hollow plastic lion that was a souvenir. My sisters and mother gave me a nickname, Leo the Lion, because my birthday was July 31st, and my horoscope, therefore, was a Leo. And so I sometimes also growled in play, and they all thought that was funny. And so my sisters and mother, they played along and said that I identified as a tiger, as a lion. And so the lion stuck as a Leo the Lion. Well, I loved that little toy lion. It was just so cool. It was a lion like me. I just loved that lion. We lived in all sorts of different places frequently when I was little, mostly because we had to be on the move without a house or an apartment or any physical place that we could stay very long. My mother's station wagon, that was a very long car, kind of like a truck bed in the back, but it was not tall like a truck and it was enclosed. Imagine a normal car, but just a super, super long back area to store stuff. Well, anyway, it was a station wagon, and that became our home, in between residences, whether that was an apartment, a house, or whatever. So we lived in a car. Because things were unpredictable, we stored any personal valuables or things inside the car, out of sight in case someone might want to break into it and steal stuff when we weren't there. But I made a mistake, and I left my toy lion visible on the dashboard. I'm sure no one even noticed. After all, who would steal a vending machine hollow plastic toy lion? And no one worried about things that I valued or had. So, on one hot, unfortunate, long day, I had left that toy lion on that dashboard of that car. And my hollow plastic toy lion melted under the sun beating down on it all day long. I later came out to find my hollowed out toy lion melted into a glop, dripping its thin plastic existence, if it ever could be called that, across the dashboard. I had so few real toys. The few toys or valuable things I had rarely survived as a child very long at all, for whatever reason. And so, losing my self-identified Leo the Lion toy was soul-crushing. I sobbed and I cried and I wept. But nothing mattered. Crying doesn't bring back the lion. My lion was gone. And no one seemed to care. It was a hard lesson for a kid. Protect what you value or it will be destroyed and no one will care. It may sound stupid, but as a toddler, that's a pretty big deal. And it is an unfortunate, dark point of wisdom to be taught as a toddler. My sorrow was not only ignored, but was actually worsened by receiving hostile judgment instead of sympathy. Sadly, no one cared but me that the lion melted in the hot sunlight, sitting on that faded car dashboard. My plastic toy lion was melted visibly and stuck to my mother's car dashboard. It didn't matter that it was a beater car that she had. Sure, there was some plastic residue left on her piece of crap, bad condition, low value, barely running vehicle. And I was her son, and she made me feel like my lost toy was absolutely irrelevant, and so were my feelings about it. I believe my mother probably was taking frustration in her life and all the decisions that she made that were poor out on me because of my poor decision leaving that little lion on that dashboard. I suppose later in life, what lion did she leave on her dashboard that she's so upset about? But she set that stage that I was being emotional, and I needed to deal with the fact that I was responsible for the loss of the lion. Cascading from my mother, my siblings joined the disdain and mockery and insults of me, and they laughed at my sorrow and my loss. As my mother also offered wisdom to my hopeless situation, an unavoidable loss. What was her wisdom? Oh, well. Interestingly, that would be a quote she would tell me, nearly to the point that she lost her mind in coma. Oh, well. If you can't change it, oh, well. Move on. Well, that's her tool. That was her coping tool. Wasn't mine. My mother used to say how she found we children preferred to play with things and toys that inspired imagination, like rocks and clothesline clips. Well, my mother was rationalizing that those were the only toys that made sense because those were the only toys she could give us. Admittedly, I did learn to use my imagination to make clothesline clips into little soldiers, cops, robbers, cowboys, Indians. Okay, yep, you're right. Indians is politically incorrect now. It's not PC. Because Indians are from India. Native Americans are from America. So I mean Native Americans. Okay? It's not racist, it's not discrimination, it's from the era. Let's continue, please. The doctors looked at me funny, but did not stop. I likewise learned all sorts of ways to stack rocks, make rock forts, sometimes for my clothesline soldiers. I would draw on rocks, I would throw rocks, I would find rocks I could draw with, I would come up with games using them, and so on. I even made rocks into friends and had conversations with my rocks. They were my little classic imaginary friend rocks. You know, as I say this aloud to you, I realize, wow, I had pet rocks way before the idea of commercialized and sold pet rocks. Oh well, I guess my mother could have made a fortune if she just had the money to invest in that. Oh well, there it is. Oh well. Funny, I suppose pet rocks have been my invisible friends for many, many generations. There you go. Probably been friends for other people for generations, and someone just finally figured out how to sell it. Dr. Brandon's iPad window glowed once more. Richard, had you considered that maybe your imagination was a cornerstone to overcoming the many hardships you have described? I answered, Dr. Brandon, I do believe it is very likely, in fact, my mind's eye that protected me was like the eye of the storm, with destruction all around, but a safe place at the heart. I had to be at the heart of darkness, so to speak, to not be enveloped by it. So yes, I agree that my imagination and my willpower were very powerful cornerstones of my shield against poverty and childhood hardships, if not hardships, all my life. Dr. Brandon replied to that. It is impressive to have that kind of insight, Richard. Your engineering brain is fascinating. Brandon continued, I researched your medical history and found that you were part of a Stanford study as a senior in high school. It was enlightening to see that you were the only student in the entire state of California that scored a 50-50 perfect split between left and right brain dominance. You had no difference in left or right brain function, or parent-related abilities. You were remarkably balanced creatively, emotionally, and analytically, critically, cognitively thinking. Your insight on both directions was remarkable. Your spatial analysis was impeccable. I wonder if perhaps that Stanford research might shed some light on how early you had become so controlling of your emotions and your intellectual thinking. Did that create the 50-50 control, or did it create the split in your brain? It is an interesting concept since these all happened during your formation of your brain. Please carry on.